Can you tell the podcast audience a bit about yourself?
My name is Marina. I'm a photographer and artist and graphic designer. I'm Ukrainian and I live in London from 2014. And in 2020, I enrolled to University of Arts London, where I started researching the image of immigration in the UK. And that's how I started the project Local Foreigners, that is about immigrants in the UK. That it is a collection of portraits and stories from people who moved to the UK from different countries. And at the moment, there are more than 50 stories, and I traveled around the UK to interview. I'm happy to talk more about that a bit later. I did quite a lot of research because that was for my master's degree before the project about how immigrants are represented in the traditional media in the UK. And I got a few insights on how to overcome the negative representation and reflect the reality of migration. That's what I'm trying to do with my project, but of course it's quite small, so I would love to see more of that in traditional media as well and everywhere everywhere else. So yeah, that's me.
And what would you say that the negative representation of immigrants in the media is, and how do you feel that we can kind of overcome this?
So I would probably start with the question here. When we talk about immigrants, what do you personally have in mind? What image do you have in mind?
Yes, that's a tough one. I
I know.
suppose I kind of partly think about how diverse London is, and I kind of think about, the sort of different cultural aspects of the cuisine. Yeah, I just think about the kind of whole massive diversity of London. Like there's the French bits, there's the sort of Portuguese, Brazilian type bits.
Yeah, I think you have a good picture. Like there is a lot of different experiences, a lot of different perspectives. However, the usual response I have when I talk about my project to other people is when I say to them that I have a project about immigrants, they are like, "Oh, you mean people who arrive on boats? Like, do you go to the seashore and take pictures of people in boats?" And that's probably the overcoming image whenever people talk about immigration in the UK, and that influences how people perceive immigration overall. First of all, I think it's how media presents it. They don't bother to sort of follow the lives of people who arrive by any means to the UK. For them, immigrant is someone between the borders. And whenever you sort of think about it as a person who comes to the UK to live here, to study here, to raise their families here, you will probably realize that their lives are just usual normal lives as everyone else in the UK have it. And it is probably not as sellable for the news. And that's why we really rarely hear about it and see it.
I suppose there's also other kind of conversations in the news about sort of productive immigrants, as it were, kind of people earning the right kind of salary, this kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. It feels like you have to sort of earn your good immigrant position. There is a book that is called Good Immigrant, a collection of stories, which is I really highly recommend to read as well. So yeah, that's what I realized when I studied, and actually then when I researched deeper into the sort of other researches on the image. In photography in particular, there are actual techniques that photographers use to represent immigrants as different from the population, or as people who don't have their own will or are a threat to the local society. And I tried to inverse these techniques and to create the image of people who are powerful and who are important members of their societies. And it's just followed that once I created a portrait of a person, I also asked their opinion on the experience of immigration, and that's how the stories were collected. I also took images of objects that reminded people of home, and it is quite a nice touch because you can see, like, when we think about immigration, we think about people. Well, if we think about the traditional media representation, they are represented as different people, like with different cultures and lifestyles that are not quite relevant to ours or to the lifestyle of local population. But in reality, when you see the objects that people pick, it's very domestic objects. Like everyone has that, maybe like a different version of it. A lot of it is food or like spices, flavors, and a lot of things like we do have in our homes as well. So this is an interesting touch that sort of changes the whole idea of immigration, and immigration suddenly becomes domestic.
I'm interested about what you've kind of been saying about representation. So what more can you tell the audience about media representation of immigrants?
Yeah, so there are techniques that were researched by Athanasia Batzio in the book Picture in Immigration. And they are like the most powerful, I would say, the depiction in groups, which are mostly male. So it's like instantly you feel that it is something like threatening, a crowd that is consisted of people other than you. And also a lot of photographers use like long camera distance where images appear quite small, so you can't read faces, so it like feels like something irrelevant to you. And also in a lot of photographs, if you get to the photo banks like Getty Images and you type immigration there or immigrants, you will see that there are not much interaction with the local population, and where there is, the local population is sort of like in authority, so they are on different levels of power. There is a power imbalance. So for example, border patrol or police or volunteers, so there's always some sort of imbalance between immigrants and the locals. And then there are other techniques as well, but also people not looking into the camera, or even if they look, they like have expressionless faces that can be read as threatening as well as violent faces. So that's like, that altogether reads as people who are threatening, or there is other approach as victimization of immigrants as well, which is a little bit dehumanizing. A lot of that comes into the image of a crowd of people that is very different from the local population, and there is little understanding about, as you said, that there are different perspectives. There is a huge diversity in this group.
What kind of led you to go into sort of graphic design and get into photojournalism?
I've been a graphic designer for about 15 years, I think. I always loved whatever visual. I wanted to be an artist when I grew up, but I actually studied applied math in my first uni, and then I realized that it's not for me. So I went to work as apprentice for graphic designer, and I really loved that job. I worked in magazines and advertising agencies, but I did photography as a hobby since I was 15. So I won't count how many years is that. That's a lot of years, basically. And I always loved it, and I spent a lot of time on it. And once I realized that that's what I would love to do for my living, so I enrolled to study photojournalism in the University of Arts in London, and that's how I started this project. And I had a lot of help on my way. So when the project it was only beginning, my classmates helped me to shape the idea of the project, and the tutors, of course, as well. And I had a year to research. I mostly focused on representation and the ethics of representation. And then in 2022, I got an Arts Council grant that allowed me to travel around the UK to interview people, because before that I had about 25 interviews, but they were mainly from London. And traveling to Edinburgh, Belfast, and Swansea helped me to realize how different the experience of migration can be there. It also is very different if you travel to a small town versus large city. So made an example of London, and here it's quite normal to be immigrant. I have a lot of friends who are immigrants. It's not the case if you travel to a smaller town. Also in 2022, full invasion of Ukraine happened, and a lot of Ukrainians arrived to the UK to protect themselves and their children as well. So I focused a bit more on their experiences as well, including my grandma. So I could interview her too. That resulted in more than 50 stories in my project now. And 12 of them were actually exhibited in Edinburgh, because I collected 12 stories from Edinburgh, and we got really nice reviews from the visitors, because they were able to come to the exhibition and see stories that are similar to their own stories, and it made people feel important, like their story matters. And it was really heartwarming experience for me as an author of the project as well, because it means that people feel seen, feel like they matter more with exhibitions like that. So yeah, that was really nice. The first exhibition was in the Museum of Edinburgh, and now actually it is still on in the Wales Art in Edinburgh.
What's people's general response to the exhibition? And would you host the exhibition in places where there were kind of fewer immigrants? I'm sure that in Edinburgh there's a fair amount of immigration. Are you kind of tempted to host it in places where there's less immigration?
Yes, I'd love to do that. I think that was my initial audience. And also I created this project for people who were looking to work in media. Maybe that would change their opinions on representation as well. So it was created more for locals to learn about different experiences and just read about different people who sort of are their neighbors and friends. So I'd love to do that. I think the main thing that stops is just the budget, because the museums that are interested in exhibitions like that are coming from either larger cities that have more immigrant population because they are large, or from the cities or towns with smaller population, but a huge chunk of it is immigrant population. So, for example, I had an exhibition in Great Yarmouth. Time and Tide Museum commissioned me to come to their city and interview people there. and they have really great immigrant communities there, and it was wonderful experience. So I guess that's why they wanted to create an exhibition like that. But yeah, I agree that towns with or cities with smaller immigrants population would probably benefit from hearing stories like that as well. It's just that I don't know how to organize that without budget, especially. It's really hard.
What have they said about the project? People, either people who've been involved in the project, who've been like photographed, or people who've gone to see the project.
I think from the perspective of the participants, it sort of matters for many people to be heard and be seen. And I feel like a lot of that comes from, at least for me, it was when I arrived to the UK, I was sort of uncertain of my place in it, and I didn't have like confidence if I'm like, if my opinion is important, if my experience is important. And whenever there's someone arrives and asks you to share your story, it means that you matter. And I think it's sort of, it means a lot to people. It matters to them to have a sort of a platform to share their experience, and they are happy to reach out to locals as well with their story. They hope, and I also hope, that it will change someone's opinion, even if it's one person. It will be better. It will make the world better, and for me and for the participants, it matters a lot. And the visitors, we have a lot of positive feedback and a lot of people who share their own stories at the exhibition. Don't think we even had one negative feedback during the whole time. And it's really heartwarming. So most of people who do share feedback, they come also to the UK from different countries, and they're happy to find the reflection of their own stories in the exhibition. But also other people, they say that they live here and they're happy to learn about other people's experience.
I was thinking about your project being a collaborative approach. How do you kind of collaborate with your subjects to do the photography?
Oh yes, that's super interesting topic. I will start with the traditional media approach, and this approach is usually like traditional photojournalism is just snap a picture of someone, maybe like getting in an interview, in many cases not, and then like post it on the photo stock or something for the newspapers to get. And I wanted to sort of reverse it again and allow people to have power over their own representation, sort of like get them to create their own image, if I can say it. Of course, a lot of people don't like know a lot about photography and lighting and stuff, but they do know how they want to look, like how they want to be represented. So I wanted to like give the participants power to control it. And that's why I ask them a lot during every photo session on if they want to change anything in the image, and they also pick the location for every portrait that matters for them. So a lot of locations are really meaningful and relevant to the stories. So, for example, probably the most interesting location was the cathedral in York, where the person worked for a long time. And yeah, sometimes there are parks where people go to relax and have a peace of mind. Sometimes it's an important place where something happened to them, or a place that they visited when they just arrived to the UK. The location and the background of the portraits is part of their stories. And then the stories themselves, I interview people, of course, but they always have an option to change anything in the story after it is written. So they are happy with it when it is published, and I want to represent them as they view themselves, and I can't do it without their own input. So I pay attention to that a lot. Every participant, for me, it feels like we had a moment of true friendship, even sometimes, because you share really important experience with someone who interviews you, and you open up to someone that probably is like different to small talk.
Mm.
Yeah. And and then there's a selection of objects as well that allows people to express themselves in some ways. So it is interesting to see what is important to them, and it is always different thing. So for some people, as I said, it is food. For some people bring like something that reminds them of family, like a photo or like some family memorabilia, so to speak. And I think my favorite objects are, though, the most like simple things. So for example, at the exhibition in Edinburgh, we had quite a few objects that people used every day. And my favorite example is a toothbrush. There was a toothbrush, and it is something that everyone has. And that particular one was made by a European brand, is not usually used in the UK. Even I have a toothbrush like that, and it's so relevant. And also, it's not something that you think about when you think about exhibition and like an important object, but it is important because it's something we use every day. I just find it really like insightful to the stories and everyday experiences of being an immigrant. That just means that we are normal people like everyone else. We also have stuff like that.
Cool. Can I ask you what your kind of object and location would be?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I need to think a moment. I think my object would be my cat, because my cat is a rescue cat from Kyiv. And it was a whole story of bringing him here in 2014 when we moved. It took a year actually to bring him here. It's much easier to bring a person into the UK than a cat. My husband and I, we both really love him. So, so even if it's not an object, but I would probably pick Simon to be part of my story. And the location, Thames Walk, like the pathway that is near Thames River. Yeah, because I spend so much time walking and running and just spending time there. And I I live on Bermondsey, so it is always like 5-10 minutes walk to Thames.
Okay.
And yeah, it reminds me about a lot of my like time with when I just was there with my thoughts. Yeah, it's probably one of my favorite places.
So, what was one of your favourite stories?
Well, it's really hard to pick one of my favorite stories because a lot of people took part in the project that had really valuable perspectives and really interesting opinions and experiences. So a lot of people from different countries, from all continents, and it would probably take a lot of time to read all of the stories. And I'm really grateful to everyone who shared their experiences. But I probably will read the story of my grandmother. I think, well, it's obviously important to me because she's related to me, but also I feel it sort of represents more or less stories of people who come to the UK after, of Ukrainians who come to the UK after 2022. I will just read the like part of the story. If you would like, you can cut it later to whatever you find interesting. So I was born into a Ukrainian family in a village in the Kursk region. It is now part of Russia, but used to be Ukrainian territory. My grandfather came there, built a mill there, and founded a village that eventually became prosperous and successful. It was even called Pospeshevka, prosperous. My dad died near Volyn when I was still very young. During the Second World War, I stayed in a German-occupied village with my grandmother because I broke my leg before the evacuation, and my family could not take me with them. Our nice house was occupied as a military office, so my grandmother and I had to live in a barn. I finished night school and moved with my husband to Donbass, where I lived most of my life and worked as a head chef in a kindergarten. There in Makiivka, I gave birth to my daughter and watched my granddaughter grow up. These are the people who are dearest to me. When the war began, my daughter brought me to London to stay at my granddaughter and her husband's place. I have been welcomed here as if in my own house. I would never have thought that I would have been so well received and taken care of. In general, I like it here, because the people are kind and helpful. And in the hospital, I was well received and treated carefully. I don't miss home, because it has been gone for a long time. I left the Donbass 10 years ago to live with my daughter in Kiev. Only one dear person, the grave of my husband Grisha, remained there. I would like to visit him, but it is not bound to happen. And since my home is where my children and grandchildren are, I don't need anything else in my life. That's the story of my grandma. A lot of stories are different, of course, but it is the one that most important to me. And thanks for hearing it.
If you were to do your own kind of little narrative about yourself, what a few things would you include?
I think a big part of my story would be trying to fit in, and it takes a lot of my energy and a lot of like mental space, and I will never be able to fit in like 100%. Even if I don't, people are still happy to like have me as I am. And I really find that there are a lot of people who find me and my story interesting because I don't look like them and talk like them. But still, somewhere inside of me, something says that I have to look and talk like everyone else, you know. And even 10 years after I arrived, there's still like this nagging thought that I have to fit and be like everyone else. But I know it's, first of all, it's not possible, and secondly, it's not necessary at all.
Mm.
So I think it is a part of my story only in terms that I tried to like make an effort and do something that is not necessary to do at all. I think a lot of people might find it relevant, but I don't know how to make them feel that it is not necessary for them as well. I can say whatever I feel, but until the person will feel that for themselves, it won't help them.
I don't necessarily think it's necessary to fit in. I gave up trying to fit in years ago.
Yeah, I wish I did that years ago as well, but I mean, I did my best.
You're fine as you are anyway.
Thank you.
No worries. So, what is sort of in the future in terms of like this project or other projects?
So I feel like this project will never end for me, honestly, because there will always be a problem like that. So it started as a collection of stories and portraits, yes, but now it grows into a bit more than that, and I'm happy to see that. So, for example, I do talks about the representation and like lectures and exhibitions as well. So I would love to see it grow. I don't think I ever will consider it done, but I also would love to take on another project, and I think they will also be connected to representation, just because I learned how to find the difference in media representation and real life for one group, but that is also the case for many groups. And I can just shift focus to any other group and it will be the same problem and probably the same or different solution. There are many solutions. That my project is just one example, but there are many wonderful projects about representation of immigrants in particular. So it's not just that there is one possible way to go about it.
So, who would you recommend to our audience if they want to learn about other artists' representation of immigrants?
So my project started from going to the British Library and browsing almost anything, any photo book I could find on immigration. And I found the book that is called The New Londoners. It is a project by a Magnum photographer, Chris Steele Perkins. The idea of my project is very similar to his as well. His project is a collection of portraits of families that came from different countries to London. There are more than 200 portraits in his book because he collected a portrait and story from a family from each country that lives in London. And it is really wonderful work. I love it. And a lot of smaller projects are there as well. It is not a project, but a book. So it's Bloody Foreigners by Robert Winder. Yeah, it is really lovely book that just goes through the whole history of people coming to the UK from different countries and focusing on particular groups as well. I absolutely love it and can recommend it.
So that's it for today's episode of The Science Intersection. A huge thank you to our guest Marina for sharing their insight and experience. It's been a real pleasure. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow, rate or review the podcast. It helps more people discover the show and the stories that matter. You can also share this episode with a friend or tag us on social media. We'd love to hear what resonated with you. Until next time, thanks for listening and stay curious.